Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of All Access AM. I am Billy Embody. Thanks for joining us on this Friday morning. Excited to be here with you guys as we will get to NCAA tournament reaction and we will get to the news that Scott Cross is the new Georgia Tech coach. We'll also look at that Syracuse head coaching search. What is next for the Orange after some of the early drama with that job has now unfolded? So we'll get into all that. I'm Billy Embody, really excited to have you guys here. Please do me a favor and subscribe to the channel. That's all you have to do. If you're watching on YouTube right now, great. That's a huge step. Just check and see if you're subscribed to the channel. Hit the subscribe button if you see that in the corner. If it's grayed out, that means you're subscribed, and we appreciate you for doing that. You can also scan the QR code that I just dropped in the corner of your screen now. So make sure you guys do that. Help us support this channel and raise it up to even higher levels. And look, with March Madness, we've got so much to talk about with the ACC, and we can go first four, we can go coaching searches, we can go now the first round of action games on Thursday being completed, and look ahead to Friday's slate for the ACC as well. And we're going to do all of that on All Access AM. But I do want to remind you guys, this is that time of year where you guys need to upgrade your wardrobe. And look, there are some opportunities here, and I know a couple of fan bases already aren't going to have a shot at this, but I tell you what, our friends at Horn Legend have delivered on the Final Four branded apparel you can grab. So go over to hornlegend.com, pick up a Final Four polo or a Final Four quarter zip. I've seen so many people start to get in on the Horn Legend action here over the last couple of months with us talking about them so much, and so many people have supported us by clicking that drop down that says on the Pony Express when you check out of Horn Legend. We appreciate you for doing that. So keep doing that. But make sure you guys check out their Final Four collection that just dropped. They got so many options there for you guys that you can see on the site. So go to hornlegend.com and make sure you guys check out all they got going on for you in that space. With the NCAA tournament here, March Madness is rolling on now as the first round delivered on Thursday. We'll see what Friday can give us. Of course, High Point upsetting Wisconsin, just so good. That type of action. Some of the games, of course, that's why we love it so much. That's why you take off work for it on those Thursday, Fridays. It's where I live, Dallas, the perfect weather for some patio watching of the NCAA tournament. But for two teams already in the ACC, they've been bounced, and that is North Carolina State and SMU getting knocked out of the NCAA tournament in the first four. NC State just couldn't hold off a Texas bucket late, and then Texas goes and beats BYU in the opening round, the first round of the NCAA tournament. So a tough situation there for the ACC, just missing out on one win in the first four, and SMU, didn't show up, and we've talked about them already over at ontheponyexpress.com, where you can find my work day in, day out. But you also have what that means for the ACC, and it's now down to 6 teams just entering Thursday in the NCAA tournament, and then North Carolina goes out and loses. Everybody else, kind of took care of business there on that front for the ACC, but nonetheless, I mean, Carolina being knocked out, we'll get to that. We'll talk about the issues that face the Tar Heels and what's next for them, and kind of a similar boat for SMU, missing a key player, and of course, one that is going to be a highly drafted one in Caleb Wilson. But nonetheless, they fall to VCU in the first round. So we'll react to some of that. For those of you who haven't heard my reaction on the SMU side of things, it should be a jarring loss, 89-79 for SMU and Andy Enfield, and how they go about building this roster and changing things to improve on the defensive end. It hasn't been pretty both years in Dallas, and they've got to find a way to build a deeper roster. Each of the last 2 years, they've lost a key player. It's affected them in a bigger way than even we saw with like a Carolina losing somebody like Caleb Wilson or a Mikel Brown with Louisville. Those are all things that because you build depth, you're able to kind of overcome. So SMU needs to kind of look in the mirror in a sense and try to figure out where they go from there to right those situations and get on the right track for a deep NCAA tournament run and getting back to the tournament. That's what they need to do. That's why they're giving up all sorts of money. That's why they're investing all sorts of money in the basketball program and Andy Enfield and trying to get that in the right direction to make a another team a strength of the ACC. And until they get right on the defensive end and until they build depth, it's going to be a challenge each year because right now they're snake bitten on the injury front. And so they took a step. They made the NCAA tournament just by the slimmest of margins. We know that, having watched it all unfold down the stretch for NC State and SMU in that respect. But you really have to find a way now to build out that depth. And the good thing for SMU is, look, if they would have had BJ Edwards for a Friday game against Tennessee, that would have helped. Who knows if he actually would have played? Some people say optimism, hopefulness, all of those things. Others say, okay, maybe he might not have been able to suit up in the end. But for SMU, they've got to find a way to build depth, and they get a jump start now on working on that depth with the transfer portal approaching, with players starting to enter as well across the country, at least saying they're going to enter, and agents talking with coaches. It's just the wild, wild west here as it begins to unfold leading up to that opening window on April 7th. And so quite a few ACC teams already working on that. NC State and SMU joined that list already at the end of Wednesday. And by Thursday, we had North Carolina joining that list as well. So before we get into NCAA tournament discussion, I do want to take a look at Georgia Tech hiring Scott Cross. Georgia Tech goes out and hires Troy head coach Scott Cross, who's fresh off an NCAA tournament loss in that opening round, but I think they lost to Nebraska. I was trying to remember who they lost to, and of course, Nebraska gets their first NCAA tournament win in program history, which was awesome to kind of watch. If you saw the radio broadcast of that, that was pretty cool at the end there. But it came at the expense of Scott Cross and Troy. Scott Cross is somebody that I've known now for about, well, I guess over a decade. I'm dating myself. He was at UT Arlington. He kind of came up as an assistant, then was head coach, and really built that program. And some things happened where the administration kind of drove it into the ground, let him go. It was a really ugly deal. Well, Troy comes in and eventually gets him after he spent some time as an assistant at TCU, and he was just a really hard nosed coach, like really intense from my time around him, and I just think the world of what he's going to bring from a mentality standpoint, and then being able to just change the culture of Georgia Tech basketball. I think he's going to fit really well in Atlanta. He has a lot of that Brent Pry tough minded mentality that I think is going to fit really well with what just their branding kind of is right now as an athletic department. And Ryan Alpert, the still relatively new AD, is doing a great job there leading that and fundraising. Scott Cross is going to replace Damon Stoudemire. That was a failed um, situation there in Atlanta, something that just did not go well as a whole. And now with Scott Cross, again, I think the biggest thing he's going to bring a long history of winning at the mid-major level. He's been to two NCAA tournaments. He's won the league as a Sun Belt in the Sun Belt. He's been the coach of the year. They had 27 wins a few years back as well when he was at UT Arlington, and you look at what he's been able to do. I mean, he's just kind of set a really high standard of play, and so you go to an ACC team that is trying to fund their NIL in a higher level, and you need somebody in that respect with Georgia Tech basketball who's still going to be able to do more than less, or at least you're betting he's going to be able to do more with less, because he's gone to UTA, he's gone to Troy, he's had success. He's been a really just strong coach for a long, long time. And I think that type of consistency is certainly what would have attracted a number of ADs to him as a head coaching candidate. But Georgia Tech did a really nice job of circling him early on in the process. I know there was some Casey Alexander buzz around there as well, with him being at Belmont, and then him ending up as the Kansas State coach, which I think is a really nice hire there. But you do have a program in Georgia Tech that was on it from a perspective of looking at head coaching options and seeing what would end up landing and making a lot of sense for them as a program. And I just think Scott Cross does that. Scott Cross legitimizes you as a basketball program from a toughness standpoint, from a mindset standpoint. I think he's going to be embraced by Georgia Tech fans, or at least he should be right off the bat. And he should be able to, inspire a lot of people to help out and fund and make a move for Georgia Tech to get them on the right path to being a successful program. And I'm interested to hear from Scott Cross how he plans to build his basketball program, how he plans to uh, work in this new, or not necessarily new, but this era of NIL and revenue sharing and the funding that Georgia Tech is trying to put together for him to have success. And the Georgia Tech program, look, I mean, they are trying to get things back on track. I mean, they haven't been to the NCAA tournament in a few years, and they really don't have a deep tradition, at least in the 2000s of or the 2010s or the 2020s of being an elite basketball program. So that has to change. That has to change over time. And Scott Cross, I think, is the right guy to do it. I mean, gosh, he spent uh, uh, well over I think 2 decades at UTA between assistant and head coach, and he's a program builder. He's a mindset builder. I just think for what Georgia Tech was looking for, I mean, between the rumored Casey Alexander and then Scott Cross, I mean, you couldn't have lined up two better candidates to try and figure out what might work in Atlanta there. So a lot of kudos to the Georgia Tech athletic department, Ryan Alpert, and them getting this done quickly and getting a move made. And I'm sure Scott Cross is still disappointed in the loss to Nebraska, but that is life as a mid major. Sometimes it doesn't work out as well as it does for a High Point or a VCU, and so they end up getting bounced, and then they can make that move to Georgia Tech relatively quickly. So it's going to be a really, really exciting new era at Georgia Tech. And I just think Tech fans should embrace Scott Cross because he's going to embrace you and be all about the program. And I think he's going to have a lot of success. So we will be tracking him. And he's one of the first college coaches to ever give me time as a young reporter. I was still in school and doing a school project, and went out and interviewed him and wrote I think it was maybe my magazine reporting class, wrote a feature story on UTA. Might have been sports reporting, but I'm pretty sure it was magazine. I'll have to try and find that one on an old computer, see if I could pull it back up. But that was an email ago, student email ago, so I don't think I still have the email from when I reached out to them to schedule it. But nonetheless, he was great. Ran into him on the recruiting trail a couple years ago, and seeing him at a Nike YBL event, I think it was, or maybe Under Armour, and just a good guy. I think he's in it for the right reasons too, which helps still in this day and age. And he's going to take over a new program in a big city and get a chance to really put his mark on that program. And I think this is a great hire by Ryan Alpert and Georgia Tech. So best of luck to Scott Cross. Hopefully we can get him on the show here and see if he'll join us and chat once he gets settled in. But lots of work to be done in Atlanta for Scott Cross, and he's going to get a lot of help. I think they're going to put some things in place to give him that boost. That's kind of the certainly a thing that all sorts of schools want to do and talk about doing nowadays when it comes to hiring a new coach is, okay, are you going to fund me? Are you going to give me more resources than this guy had, and all of those things? So Scott Cross, best of luck to him, and we're excited to follow him here at All Access AM. Speaking of following, our friends at Socorro Tequila, the following continues to grow. Their award-winning tequila continues to deliver for anyone who tries it. We all we get is rave reviews about Socorro and their high level of tequila. It is clean. It is just agave water and yeast, and that's why it's won awards. The Blanco, the Reposado, the Añejo. It's just a really, really uh, incredible brand that continues to grow, and we're very proud to be partnered with them. So the great thing is you don't have to leave your house to order Socorro tequila and get it delivered right to your front door. You can order 3 bottles or more, and you get shipping free. So it'll show up to your door. It's really easy. Go to socorrotequila.com. Or if you're flying on American Airlines this time of year around spring break, it's their official tequila. So you can also try it on an airplane too and enjoy it as you travel. So make sure you check out our friends at Socorro Tequila. And if you like it enough, share something on social. Make sure you tag us, All Access AM, and let them know where you heard about it from. So we appreciate Socorro for their support. Speaking of support is probably waning now for Hubert Davis as he has now been put on ice in the NCAA tournament. VCU coming back in dramatic fashion to force overtime and send North Carolina packing. Hubert Davis and the Tar Heels are headed home after a first round exit in the NCAA tournament. VCU went on a 19-3 run. They were um, you know it just really it just really was incredible to kind of watch the North Carolina collapse happen. And I think um watching VCU do what they did, um it really begs the question, like, is Hubert Davis going to be safe after this? I think there's going to be a lot of uh people that are going to be immediately calling for his head over there. And I think losing Caleb Wilson is a huge piece, and you can't overlook that in the 82-78 loss in overtime for the Tar Heels. And you really want to, say, okay, what, the team he built, shoulda, coulda, woulda been in better position with a lottery pick and a potential, top 5 pick or whatever he's going to be, or number 1 pick, whatever he's going to be. Uh, but nonetheless, I mean, North Carolina, and as of late in the ACC tournament and now the NCAA tournament, the collapses have just been incredible these last 2 games. I mean, VCU um, was kind of dead to rights. UNC was up 19 points on them. They were rolling offensively, and then just kind of got careless. 7 turnovers and let VCU back into the game. The lead was down to 11, um, that was with about 5 minutes to go, and then by the time they called timeout with 2:14 to play, it was just down to 4, and it was a ball game. And then you're in a dogfight, and so VCU was able to find a way to force overtime, and then they go out and they kind of cruise in overtime in a sense. And they've lost now 3 of their last 6 times in the first round of the NCAA tournament. Those are quick exits for a proud program. And if not for North Carolina, if yeah, David, you are so David Schuler. I hope I'm saying that right. Appreciate you jumping in the chat. It's time for him to go, and I called after 2022 season. They were bailed out a million times on that run and overcame his mistakes. There's a lot of UNC fans that are no doubt feeling that way about Hubert Davis, and I can't sit here and blame them. UNC dumps a bunch of money into their basketball program. We all know that. They have endless amounts of resources. They have the brand. They have the ability to do NIL at a high level and create deals that make sense and stand on their own because they have UNC. I mean, that is who they are. They have the brand. They have the history. They have the Dean Dome. All of those things that make the basketball brand up here among the upper echelon of college basketball. And for them to double down and do all the things that they did last offseason to try and work things out with Hubert Davis and make it a program that, okay, we're going to invest in roster building, we're going to invest monetarily, we're going to invest time wise, we're going to do all of those things that we need to do. And then to see a first round exit, okay, now you're right back here again, 19 days away or so from the April 7th. I'm a Duke fan, so I want him to stay. David, I love it. That is good. I appreciate that context there as David Schuler jumps in on YouTube again. Uh, but it's bad when you're unable to even try to say no, he should stay. Look at what he's done, or he was able to overcome Caleb Wilson's injury at times, or whatever. You didn't even try to hide, how he should go as a whole, even being a Duke fan. So that is good stuff there, David. Appreciate you chiming in. Uh, but UNC, the level they invest in this program, the changes that they tried to make to put Hubert Davis in position to be successful, knowing you had Caleb Wilson coming in, knowing you were able to add Henry Visar, and you just have all these things going the right way for you. You have Seth Trimble back for his kind of legacy year and all of that, and you overcome the injury to Seth Trimble earlier this year. Man, you can't show up like this in postseason play. It's like, I remember when Tony Dungy got fired from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers all those years ago. And I'm not saying Hubert Davis is Tony Dungy, but eventually teams wear thin with the lack of success in the NCAA tournament in the postseason, and it's all relative now to how much you're spending and your spending level and your commitment to being successful. And I don't know if North Carolina is going to make this hard decision and fire Hubert Davis and go on a coaching search. And I got to imagine Bubba Cunningham and that group has kept a close eye on the carousel. I think they've already seen a couple good names go. I don't necessarily think it is this banner year for coaches in the carousel, but I'm also sitting here knowing that it's Carolina. And if they go out and they say, okay, look what we did from a roster perspective. Now we're going to spend this amount of money going to go get a coach and, take it to the next level from a coaching perspective. That is a shakeup for the industry if they decide to go down that route. And if they do, who knows who they can go out and get. I mean, that's the thing about being Carolina and the level of commitment that they have there is you can't take anybody off of the table. I'd be intrigued to see what their list would end up being and who would be the ultimate choice if they went away from Hubert Davis. But they also have obviously tight, deep ties with Hubert Davis, and that's something that is going to be um, tough to overcome, I think, internally. But at the same time, man, if you're not getting the ROI for what you're spending, and especially after a year where I'm sure Hubert Davis said, "Hey, I need more commitment, I need more help. We got to do this, we got to do that." it's I mean, you've got to find a way to take that next step and deliver when you're given the resources you've asked for. And again, injury plays a big part here. Caleb Wilson out, unable to play. That's a huge chunk of your roster value. That's a huge chunk of what you spent. So how do they factor in that when evaluating it? But at the end of the day, you had helped lead UNC to this big margin that you were up against VCU and you collapse and you lose, I think, to Clemson. I think was it Clemson in the first round of the ACC tournament as well. Not a great situation as a whole. And uh, this is the second year in a row that their loss in the NCAA tournament really kind of had a feel from a um, like macro sense about their season. It was exactly what you kind of saw from UNC all year. You saw a lot of good, and then you saw like a mystifying ability to be poor and not good enough over the course of their season. And that's why they weren't like upper echelon. But this is the first time that North Carolina has lost 3 consecutive games to close a season in 56 years. Here's a great stat for you, and we appreciate Inside Carolina. They're the best of the best when covering UNC. But from 1985 to 2019 in the NCAA tournament, and 85 is relevant because that's when they expanded to 64. Carolina was 31-1 in the first round of the NCAA tournament. Carolina is now 2-3 in the first round of the NCAA tournament since 2019. And let me put this into a little bit of perspective here as we go and wrap up these thoughts. I do want to get to first round action here, but and we got to talk about Syracuse, but also, man, you have a new world of NIL. You have a new world of revenue sharing. You have a new era of money being paid out to players, and it's very public. It's social media, it's deals, it's all those things. And the some blue bloods are obviously handling it well. We've seen what Duke's been able to do. You've got some really high level programs that have been built. Of course, what Dusty May is doing at Michigan, and you're seeing, some of the money that's been invested, like in a Miami, for example, pay off, and they've been able to get relevant fast in basketball. And in this day and age, and I saw a great article, and this is relevant to the NFL, but I've always said this from high school recruiting, and once transfer was added in, it's a how much do you want it? Like you almost have to interview the person as much as you're interviewing the player. And I'm not saying North Carolina's roster is filled with bad guys or NIL mercenaries or whatever, but also you have to be cognizant of when you're building your roster, you got to know that some rosters out there are going to be built with less, but they're going to be built with more character and more heart and more of a better mindset than yours might be because you're taking a highly touted player, you're taking an expensive player, or you're doing this or you're doing that, that is more in line with maybe monetary spending and talent acquisition versus character acquisition and program loyalty. And obviously, Seth Trimble definitely not a part of any sort of question on program loyalty. But you have to find a way in this day and age to assemble that the right way. And Carolina, both in football and in basketball, you could certainly argue way more in football, but in basketball that they're now struggling in this new era. That time's up with okay, post COVID and NIL and transfer portal and all those things that have now changed the entire complexion of this world that we live in. And who are they going to get if they do go away from Hubert Davis, who's going to be able to navigate that and diagnose all of those things and put it in the right situation? I'd be just fascinated by that coaching search and what that looks like, because I fear they would be loyal to another North Carolina Tar Heel type of deal. Would they go out and get somebody who really loves, the Tar Heels, loves Chapel Hill, kind of does that? Or do they go out and they hire a great basketball coach and then give them the resources to hire a GM and a scouting department and this and that looks more NBA like, that dives into all of those things? You got to put it all together in today's day and age, and Carolina clearly hasn't done that. Duke did beat Siena in first round action, but the Blue Devils, for our guy David, gave him a little bit of a heart attack there as Siena led by 11 in the first half. I'm sure David was not happy with John Shire and company as they were going in their first round of the NCAA tournament. But I bring up this game. Duke won 71-65. They stepped up in the second half, shut down Siena, were able to play a great brand of basketball defensively and get back on track offensively. Cameron Boozer, a triple, not a triple double, but double double, and led the team in assists as well with 5. Just really really solid. Or his brother Caden Boozer led the team in assists with 5. Just a solid offensive performance in the second half that was able to get it done. But I say all that to say, Jerry McNamara, the Siena head coach, is now very much in the mix for the Syracuse job. And John Shire said after the game and gave a lot of credit to Jerry McNamara and said, look, he outcoached me. He had his team ready to roll. And he was the associate head coach of Syracuse, and he's from Syracuse, went there. And so this one makes a lot of sense. He looks like the no-brainer for Syracuse to pick as its next head coach. But I just think this job for Jerry McNamara would mean a lot. But at the same time, it's really one of those things where does Syracuse have the money? Does Syracuse have the commitment that Jerry McNamara wants to say, okay, yes, let's go do this. Because if you're going to go walk into your alma mater where you have great memories, you have a great fondness for, there's no doubt about that, and you eventually aren't given the tools to succeed, and you know that it's going to be an uphill battle, and you know that that fan base is one day going to eventually say, well, he didn't get it done for us as coach. And these coaches have egos, they have confidence, they have arrogance at times, and a lot of them think that they can just go into any situation and we're going to be fine. And maybe Jerry McNamara just has the right feel for Syracuse, and if he does go into that situation, he'll be able to bring it up to the level that it needs to be, and he'll lift up all the boats in the water. And he'll what is it? The rising tide lifts all boats, or something like that. He's going to be able to find a way to put them in the right position from an NIL, fundraising, and all those things, because I think coaches play a big role in that. If he puts that all in place and he feels like he could be successful because he's there, because he fits that well, that people would say, oh, I want to see GMAC succeed. Those are all things that he's probably going to have to consider, because Siena making the NCAA tournament, being successful in terms of at least giving Duke a game in that respect, all of those things are going to make him even more of a talking point around this Syracuse coaching search. So how do you go and evaluate that from Jerry McNamara's perspective, and then for Syracuse, are they going to go full tilt towards him? Because Brian Hodgson and Josh Schertz are no longer candidates from what it seems like. So this seems like a natural fit. It seems like all of those uh, ideas of why he would make a lot of sense would ultimately lead him to Syracuse. But will he do it? Will Syracuse be going down the road of targeting him too? It's a question worth asking. As Siena is now done with the NCAA tournament, Brian Hodgson is now done with South Florida after Louisville did dispatch them. I will say this: Louisville was up 10 at the half, and was kind of rolling offensively, and then all of a sudden, USF scores 52 points in the second half to cover. It got really dicey there. Isaac McNeely had 23 points. No Michael Brown as well, but Ryan Conwell added six uh, assists in the game and had 18 points. Javon Hadley had 10, so three of the five starters ended up in double figures. Joe Pignon had 27 points. Isaiah Nelson had 22 points for USF. Big nights for them. But look, just the Bulls weren't able to overcome Louisville. Louisville moves on. It's a big win for them. They've invested, they've made those moves. Appreciate you stopping in, David. Great show. Have to check out those Siena undersized post players, but with a wide base hurt Duke guards on the switches. Not to mention they had their season average of 5 threes in the first half. Teams that hit their average of threes in one half. I mean, that was me covering SMU most of this year. So a little taste of what it was like watching that defensive performance for SMU all year. But David, I appreciate you for stopping in, and good luck the rest of the way in the tournament as Duke advances to the round of 32 and will face, I believe they're facing, they've got TCU. So we'll see another Texas school right down the road from SMU that is in the NCAA tournament and beat Ohio State and hung on in that one, but was able to make it happen. On this Friday, and we'll keep this show relatively short because it's a lot of NCAA tournament reaction. But on this Friday, we've got 12:50 p.m. Central Time, I believe, on this Virginia, Wright State to kick off the day for the ACC. 5:50 p.m. Central Time on TNT. You've got Clemson taking on Iowa. That one's going to be a fascinating game. And then these have got to be Eastern Time. There's no way this game's starting at 10 p.m., but maybe I'm wrong. 9:10 p.m. On True TV for Miami versus Missouri. That is, that's got to be Central Time. That is going to be a fun one. Missouri's going to be basically the home team there in St. Louis. I forget which one I picked on that game in particular, but it's just going to be fascinating to watch some of these some of these teams have to battle that type of a home court environment for a team like Missouri, who's going to have so much force behind them. When it comes to Miami, they've got to have a plan for Mark Mitchell. The offense runs through him over there from Missouri. He is a guy David, I'm sure, is familiar with. He came from Duke and now has a team high 18.3 points per game coming into the game and this NCAA tournament. And, they snuck in as a 10 seed, basically kind of jumping, it seemed like NC State late in the committee's eyes with their slide. And, Miami went out and added a lot of size under Jay Lucas to try and put this team in the right position to be ready to rock and roll from day one, at least in the ACC. And they got rewarded for it. They were top 4 seed in the ACC. They end up a 6 seed, I think, in the NCAA tournament, maybe a 7, 7-10 matchup. So they just kind of did everything they could to be just like a base level solid ACC team, but their guys ended up playing really hard together, and Miami has been able to for the most part be a really really cool story in the ACC. And they've kind of faltered a little bit here down the stretch. I think they've lost technically 2 of their last 3. Now, granted, you get deeper into the ACC tournament when you have your buys, and then you also played Louisville at home on senior day. They've lost 2 of their last 3, so they've got to figure out how to make things right. But they did beat Louisville in the ACC tournament to advance. You have a really interesting matchup here with Missouri, and it reminds me of SMU taking on Miami of Ohio in the first 4, where I think it's going to be a raucous environment there in St. Louis for the Tigers. I think they're going to travel well. I think people are going to show up and support them. So how does Miami manage that? How do they manage the you know the environment that you're going into and not trying to do too much early? Try to weather the storm and just worry about the things you control, like you know defending the 3. That's something that is certainly giving them troubles at times, but they also got to make their opportunities. It's not something they've done too well. They've played really an inside out type of game, and really with the emphasis on the inside game with their size and physicality down low. And Malik Renault wasn't able to really get going last time out against Virginia, so he's got to bounce back. There's a lot of different things that Jay Lucas, I think, is going to have some things drawn up for. I think I picked Miami in this one. I just think they're really steady, and despite kind of facing some tougher competition late, they're going to be on the right track here. So that's probably the game I'm most excited to watch. It's also 9 o'clock at night, but it's so it'll be kind of probably me time at that point as the day will be wound down. And then Clemson taking on oh gosh, I just had it. Clemson taking on Iowa. This is a really difficult one for Clemson. I picked Iowa in this one. I think Clemson's been way too inconsistent. I think Iowa's a really really high level of consistency. Relative to matching up against Clemson. You don't have Carter Welling anymore. So that's a huge hit as well when you go into the NCAA tournament. So I'm expecting Iowa to come out and honestly probably handle Clemson in this one. Brad Brownell has his hands full going into the NCAA tournament, and they've got to find a way to make things happen and make things change in the tournament from kind of the strugglingness of what they faced in the ACC tournament and late really in the season. So really intrigued to see how Clemson can figure this one out. But if they do, hey, that'd be kudos to Brad Brownell, and we'll see how it goes. But I expect Virginia to roll. I don't think they'll have many problems. I think they're so deep. I think they're so balanced, and they're very, very talented. So we'll be watching that one unfold too. So look, hope you guys enjoyed this kind of down and dirty run of ACC basketball news. We'll be back next week on Monday. Spring ball continues on for a lot of these college programs around the country, and we'll check in with some of them across the ACC as spring ball picks up. And hopefully for the ACC's sake, we get a lot of wins this Friday as a trio of teams in action in March Madness. So I appreciate all of you guys, especially David, for chiming in. Hope you guys are all subscribed to All Access AM. Check out our friends at Horn Legend and Socorro Tequila. And hope you guys have a great weekend of March Madness. Enjoy it all. And thanks for watching. I'm Billy Embody. We'll catch you next time on All Access AM.